Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Northeast Scene Podcast. This is Keith.
And Tommy.
How's everybody doing? We're back. We're ready. We're doing this. And we've got a special guest, guitarist and member of one of my favorite Philly bands of all time, Everyone Everywhere, Tommy Manson.
Woo! Yeah!
Hi, everybody.
Tommy, now this is exciting. One, because we have another Tommy on the show, right?
Yeah, that rarely happens, I must say.
That's never happened. So we'll say Tommy D and Tommy M to differentiate so as not to confuse the audience.
That sounds good.
So Tommy, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. I don't think I've spoken to you in a long time. In fact, when I was messaging you to come on the show, I saw like our Twitter exchange from 2012 when I said I was moving. I was like, wow, look at that. Time flies.
Oh, wow. I didn't even go back. I got so excited about the DM on Twitter and coming on the podcast that I didn't even look.
You're going to have to go back and do that right when this is done.
I will. I must say, I didn't realize that Everyone Everywhere was one of your favorite Philadelphia bands of all time, so that puts a lot of pressure on me right now.
Big time. I have a very grueling set of questions that I'm going to be asking, and if they're not answered exactly correct, you're forever banned from the show.
Oh boy, I don't want to tarnish whatever minimal legacy we have in your eyes, at least.
No, I'm just messing with you. I'm going to get to my fawning over Everyone Everywhere later in the interview, but first I want to start with some basic stuff. Now, as you know, of course, we've been in COVID lockdown, and I like to see where everybody's at. Tell me what you do day to day in your life, like for work and everything, and how you are affected by this pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been working from home since I think it was like March 13th or 15th. So I work in the film industry. I've been in the film industry probably since around 2008 or 2009. Brendan, the lead singer of Everyone Everywhere, actually got me into production accounting, so film
nice.
industry accounting. So he started out in that and got me into it. And then I've just kind of stuck with it, and I guess that's what my career is now. I used to be freelance, just kind of hopping from project to project, but currently I'm working directly for and exclusively for a local Philadelphia area director. And that's all I'll say, but you could probably connect the dots there.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think there's maybe more than one.
I was going to say, I only know one.
Yeah. It's probably who you're thinking of.
Yes.
But we were actually in production. We just had finished up episode 6 of season 2 of a TV series that we've been working on, and before the lockdown began. So all of production has kind of been at a standstill. Mm-hmm. So I've just been working from home, but I do personal finances and some other things as well. So I've been staying busy, but I have an extra room in my house. So we kind of turned that into an office. I have everything set up here. I got, my dork accounting set up with multiple monitors and my 10 key adding machine and a bunch of paperwork and stuff like that. So basically I've been doing all my work from home. I'm here. I got 2 dogs, 2 cats, and my wife. So it's kind of a full house. So, definitely I know a lot of people kind of have been going stir crazy if they're by themselves or they don't have anybody to communicate with or be with. So it's been not terrible in regards to that, because I still kind of feel like I have a little bit of a social life because I have, Megan and the dogs and stuff. But basically my Monday through Friday, I'm just doing my desk job. I actually can probably get all my work done in like 5 hours as opposed to like 8 or 10. Mm-hmm. So I feel a lot more efficient. And then I just have been playing a lot of video games. That's kind of
now that's a question I just want to start asking every guest if they game. Now, do you play Call of Duty at all?
I don't play Call of Duty. I was a big Counter-Strike guy back in the day.
Yeah.
Talking like early 2000s. Built my own computer and did Counter-Strike and did the LAN parties and all that stuff. But I haven't really gotten into the world of like online gaming with other people, mostly because I'm like really nervous about that, and I'm definitely afraid of the younger kids making fun of me and calling me names and things like that. But I've just been playing a lot of Switch and PS4, but mostly games that are just kind of self-contained, not online games or anything. Like I finally beat Red Dead Redemption 2 a few weeks ago.
That was probably my second, if not definitely in my top 3 of all-time favorite games. I was legitimately depressed when I finished it because I didn't have a whole lot going on in my life at the time. And you know how in that game, like, you build an entire life. You have friends you can visit with. You have stuff you have to do. You build like an entire life. And I spent every Saturday afternoon and sometimes more days playing it for months and months and months. And when it was done, I was like, oh my God, what's next?
I got ambushed during the game, and that was the only time that my horse died in the game.
Yes.
And it was basically, I was probably 3/4 of the way through the game, if not more.
Oh, no.
And I remember it so clearly when it happened. I didn't even know he died. I just kind of like respawned, and then my horse wasn't there, and I had to go back and get my saddlebags, and I legitimately teared up, and I was very, very upset when my horse died. And I tried everything, going back into save files and going back and this and that, and there was just like no way around it. He just died, and like,
I had no idea
that was it.
It was possible for me to care about a fake horse, but that same thing happened to me early in the game, and I was like, oh my God, I care. What happened? And then I went up in the mountains and got one of those rare white horses, and thankfully I held on to it until the end.
You know what? I had one of those horses at the time that my horse, I named him Benny after my cat. After when Benny died, I had one of those horses, and I wasn't even playing with that. I forget what the white horse is called, the really rare special one or whatever. But I didn't even care that I had that horse. I knew it was better, but I wasn't even playing with it. So then when Benny died, I was just like, I guess I'll use this really good horse. I don't know. But like, I didn't want to use it. It was really weird.
It is. I get so invested in these games, and I ask about Call of Duty because I'm trying to expand my Call of Duty network. I'm determined to get a number 1 Warzone win. I've come in second. I've come in third, but I just haven't done it yet. So I always ask.
The only thing I can relate to that on is, do you ever see the Never-Ending Story?
Yes.
When that horse Artax dies?
It's like that, dude.
Dude,
it's like that.
My daughters made me turn the movie off when that part happened. They were like, Daddy, turn this off. Turn it off. And I was like, okay. Like, they literally were like, the horse is
real.
there.
I mean,
it's traumatizing.
It is traumatizing. I was very upset. It's exactly like that. And then recently I just beat Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, yes. No spoilers.
No spoilers. I will say, so I pre-ordered the game and it preloaded onto the PlayStation, so I played it from day one. I played through it twice now, and that's the first and only game that I beat at 100% and got like the platinum trophy for.
Wow.
Like, I was just obsessed with that game. But if you like the first one, you're gonna love this one. It's a masterpiece. It's incredible.
I can't wait. That's next on my list. I'm working through Final Fantasy VII Remake now, and then Last of Us 2 is next.
Yeah. So my wife and I basically take turns on, because we only have one PlayStation, on who basically gets really invested into a game at a time.
Yeah.
So she actually had just beaten Final Fantasy VII, and then couple weeks went by, we weren't really playing too much, and then Last of Us came out. So basically it was like 2 or 3 weeks of her just playing Final Fantasy VII nonstop, and then me playing Last of Us 2 nonstop. So we kind of have like a good cycle going. She actually just downloaded Skyrim a few hours ago.
Oh shit!
and
Yeah.
and she's getting back into that now because I don't think she's played it since like the old Xbox or whatever.
It must be
So
cool to have a wife who games because my girlfriend hates video games, and yeah, it will be good because you have something in common, but then bad because you have to share the PlayStation.
yeah, I was actually on Craigslist today looking at PlayStations. Yeah, she made the joke saying that we're gonna need two PlayStations now because we're playing so much. But yeah, so it's cool, and I like watching other people play, and she does as well, which I think works, perfectly for this situation. We both kind of liken it to watching a movie, so I'm
That's
totally
awesome.
fine with just watching her play for a few hours at a time, and she's completely fine with me playing. It's you always see the memes online of the boyfriend playing the PlayStation, and the girlfriend being all like upset
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
But it's not like that. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, Keith, you just watch the Final Fantasy like clips, right? Sometimes like the ones that are all like clipped together, so it's like kind of like watching a movie.
Before I played Final Fantasy VII Remake, I watched a almost 6 hour YouTube video that someone made of the original Final Fantasy VII, and it's just like all the dialogue and scenes and everything. So it's like a big long movie. It was
That's great.
It was incredible. Well, I'm gonna shift the focus now because I could talk about video games probably for an entire 2 hours, but I don't know if our dedicated audience wants to
Yeah,
hear
they're
just
gonna be
about
like,
that.
"What the fuck?"
Yeah, let's have a larger appeal here.
So where do you live, Tommy? Do you live in Fishtown?
Yeah, I guess you can call it Fishtown, outskirts of Fishtown. I don't even know. I'm sure if you ask the locals, it's not Fishtown, but in the general Fishtown area, yeah.
Did you ever live? Do you remember that legendary like 5 Point corner in Fishtown? Like I think like three people from Centrifuge lived there, and Gary Shaw lived there, and Loco Pez was there.
Yes. So I lived there initially. So initially, Everyone Everywhere had a warehouse at 6th and Girard above Everybody Hits. Everybody Hits wasn't there at the time. We were kind of the first people to have that warehouse in its latest iteration. So when the time came, we kind of got kicked out by L&I over there because we weren't supposed to be living there.
Yeah.
So me, Brendan from Everyone Everywhere, and a couple other friends, we moved into a house at the Forks, they call it, in Fishtown, at a house there probably around like, I don't know, 2008 or 2009. And, Gary Shaw lived right down the block.
Yeah.
A couple other Centrifuge people lived nearby. And it was right before Loco Pez opened. I think it was maybe 6 months before Loco Pez opened. It used to be called the Crazy Fish. The Crazy Fish was there for like a couple months. It was just a local dive bar.
Oh
Then
yeah,
they
I forgot
closed.
about that place.
Yeah. And then they closed, and then Loco Pez opened up, and kind of kept the same name. But I lived there for maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I, she lived with us briefly when we were dating, and then we got our own place together, and now we're up. We kind of haven't left the general area since then.
Those were good times. I mean, crazy times for me. Gary and I got ourselves into, well, not so much Gary, but I got myself into a lot of trouble all the time. And, it was, it was good. I miss it. When I see people post pictures down there and stuff, I'm like, oh man, it feels like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about, especially I think of the days of when we had that warehouse where we kind of all live. I think there was like 12 of us in there at one point. But that feels like so long ago. And I mean, I guess it kind of was. It was, probably about 12, 13 years ago, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
man, it was just ridiculous back then. I mean, it almost felt like at that era in Philadelphia, there were just like no rules.
So I'm going to take us back even further so I can learn more about your background. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Bucks County in Bensalem.
So you're a Ben Salem kid. I didn't know
I'm
that.
a Bensalem kid, yeah. So
I'm
I
a
went to-
Bristol Levittown kid.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. My mom actually just moved to Bristol. She is in the process of selling our childhood home, and she actually just moved into. She got a condo in Bristol, so she's now there. But yeah, grew up in Bensalem, not too far from Palanca Park. Went to Bensalem High School, so kind of had the privilege of going to all those crazy Palenque Park shows since I was probably way too young to be going to them.
Nice. How do you remember how old you were when you like the first ones you went to?
So I will say the first local DIY show that I went to, I was probably 12 years old, and it was in Tim Nid's parents' basement. So if you know Tim Nid from the band The Nids.
Yeah.
So that was the very, very first show that I went to. And then I kind of, that was kind of the beginning of me finding out about kind of the DIY punk culture kind of in the area. But I was always friends with older kids. So it was, I was always the younger kid hanging out. So they kind of already kind of knew exactly what was going on. They knew all of the shows, all of the venues and things like that. So I was kind of just tagging along with them. But that was the first show that I went to. I can't remember all the bands that played there, but I remember it being crazy. My friend Steve that took me there, he said, "Man, I can't wait for the mosh pit." And like I had no idea what that was at the time, and I was starting to get nervous, and I was like, "Oh man, like what are you talking about?" And he was like, "The mosh pit." I was like, "I don't know what that is, man. Like, what is it?" And he wouldn't tell me. So I was really, really nervous. I remember the entire time that his parents were driving us to the show because he like wasn't telling me what it was. And I thought it was going to be this like weird, crazy thing. It was like a 20 foot by 20 foot basement in like a suburban home.
Yeah.
And we get there and, a mosh pit starts and kids start dancing and moshing and stuff like that. And then I kind of realized what it was. But I remember the entire day leading up to it because I was kind of like a nervous, kind of like nerdy kid growing up. I never really got into too much trouble or anything like that when I was very young.
Yeah.
And so I like had no idea what to expect. But that was like the first introduction, I would say, into kind of like the house show era.
Yeah, and some of those mosh pits, back then you could actually get killed, like especially at Palenque Park shows.
Oh,
or,
yeah,
or like
definitely.
Philly shows. You had to know exactly where to stand and who to stay away from, and it was like crazy.
It was like a
For
weird.
sure.
It was like a weird calculus you had to do in your head of like, okay, this person's here, this person's here. If I go like 3 people back from like the left-hand side of the stage, no one's gonna jump from that side because the PA's there. Like you literally had to kind of make sure that you were in a place. Like unless you were gonna go actually in and go and dance. Like once you went in, it's like you're taking your life in your hands.
I remember Buried Alive played the Kill Time. It was this legendary show with Morzer and Converge, and Buried Alive was just sound checking, and I got like roundhouse kicked and like flew through the air and hit a wall. Like it was just during the sound check.
The earliest show I remember of just of kind of the realization of wow, something crazy might happen, or we might get in trouble, or we might get killed, or something like that was the Spring Fling Fest. I don't know if you went to that.
That was Bobby's
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was an insane, like I can't even imagine being there now. Like my parents just dropping me off, I remember. And like they had no idea what was going on in there. And I mean, granted everything was relatively safe, and especially me as like a younger kid, I forget how old I was then, but probably like, 12 years old or 13, 14, somewhere around there. Definitely 14 or younger. But I felt like everybody kind of was looking out for me and I also looked very, very young. So I feel like a lot of people did kind of look out for me as this younger kid, and they're like, okay, we're gonna make sure that he doesn't get hurt, or people are gonna kind of protect me a little bit. But that was the first time. I mean, it was just wall to wall people. It just seemed like that there was way too many people for the room.
And
Just
there probably was.
Oh no, there
There
100%
probably
was.
people going crazy, people dancing. I mean, like that was the one show where I just kind of was like, whoa, this place is really cool, and what's going on right now is something awesome.
That's awesome. So yeah, that was my experience too. I was younger than everybody I was hanging out with. I looked even younger than I actually was. It was like So maybe people were like, "Oh, we can't kill him because we'll end up in jail. He's like 12."
Yeah, it was.
Well, I also wasn't a trouble seeker at the time either. I was very scared of everything at the time, and I just kind of stayed out of the way. And I would usually never even like sing along or go into the pit because I was just afraid of getting like, destroyed.
Yeah. No, it's kind of similar to how I was.
Yeah, and I filmed a lot of shows back then too, so I was pretty much doing that the whole time. So, what music grabbed you at first? Was it hardcore? Was it emo? Was it everything?
It was kind of a bit of everything. So, like I mentioned before, I was always friends with some older kids, and I got into music very, very young. And one of, I guess, kind of like my favorite stories. I've only told it to friends. I haven't, posted about it or talked to anybody about it or like interviews or anything. But so growing up, it's like maybe like 12 years old or whatever. I was into a lot of the corny stuff like Korn and Limp Bizkit and things that or whatever.
Yeah.
Just kind of stuff that I could get my hands on as a kid, kind of like the mainstream stuff. But
Right.
then I was also into a lot of the more punk stuff or more underground stuff that like older kids would give me or friends would give me or whatever. So whether it was like Fugazi or Propagandhi or Anti-Flag or kind of whatever that stuff was. But one of my favorite local bands was Sunday Drive. So Kenny from the Starting Line, they later became the Starting Line.
Oh right, yeah.
So they were like one of my favorite bands. I think they were from like Horsham or whatever, but I would see them play all the time. And Kenny actually gave me, I think it was like a burned copy or maybe just one song he sent me online or something, because we used to talk on AIM too, which was like really, really weird.
Yeah.
But I feel like everybody like kind of talked on AIM back then, and it was just like
They
I don't
did,
know.
and I would like message random bands and people I didn't even know, and like I don't know, with weird stuff. It was like a whole thing.
Yeah, and I remember like reading liner notes and stuff like that and trying to find somebody that had like an at AOL.com address and then like
Exactly.
trying to like instant message them.
Yeah.
And I think on like a Sunday Drive demo, it was like, it was like Sunday Drive without the vowels at AOL.com or whatever. So I messaged them one day and I started talking to Kenny, and then like, I don't know, like why this like 16-year-old kid was like talking to me anyway, but like he gave me a bunch of like cool music, I guess, because I was a fan. And but he gave me an American football, either like burned CD or MP3s or something, I can't remember. So at the time when I was like 12 years old or 13, listening to stuff like Korn and whatever, like I also had these random CDs like American football. So I was listening to American football from like a very, very early age. And then that was kind of like my first introduction to emo. And then through Napster and SoulSeek and LimeWire, whatever the greatest downloading website was at the time, when everyone got shut down, you would always like search for like keywords or whatever, or you would download a title and it would have like a ton of different just like keywords in it. But I was downloading some American football stuff, and there were like some like early demos and things like that. But they had all of these tags on it that were like the Promise Ring, Braid, stuff like that. So then I started downloading those bands, and I got into that stuff kind of early. But it was kind of like also all the meanwhile while I was listening to like shitty new metal. So it was just like, 'cause I didn't know any better, being so young. But I'm grateful that I was able to kind of get into decent stuff as well as, while I was listening to super shitty music.
Yeah, I would always jump. It was like all or nothing with me. I was listening to new metal. I liked Korn and the first Limp Bizkit record. Then I discovered hardcore, and that was it. That was all I listened to. Everything else went out the window. Then I listened to emo, and that was it. That was all I listened to. And eventually I just didn't give a shit anymore, and I listened to whatever. But it was always all or nothing. Like when I jumped from one genre to the next.
Yeah, and just growing up, some of my close friends, in like the Bucks County area were in sometime in April, Set Ablaze, you know, kind of like that crew. So I was always into hardcore music as well, metal music as well. But you know, emo is definitely from a very, very young age the kind of music that I sort of gravitated towards.
So yeah, it's amazing how many people were connected through that scene in Bucks County, and we just never knew it. Like I've had a lot of people on here who have contacted us who I just never knew, and even you. Like I was at all those shows, I never knew you. I was a little older, but like it's just crazy, like the sheer amount of people.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, looking back at a lot of those shows and the people and things like that, and even bands and stuff like that that are still around, people that are still around today doing music industry stuff or whatever, like a lot of them came from that area. But it's definitely a strange thing to look back on and kind of realize how weird or special that it was, because I mean it really was, if you think about it, like the size of the shows that took place in Bucks County, the amount of bands that played, like big name bands and things like that. I mean, it was like I don't think it was necessarily going on all across the country like that, so we were definitely in a cool little pocket.
There was a weird thing. Vadim posted it, I mean, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just all of his collection of stuff from like the Bucks County scene. And it had like, I remember it was like 250 comments or something like that. And it was just all these people being like, oh my God, I forgot about that. But it was like a picture of like a Life Once Lost demo and Peter Parker, Suffer in Truth, Dislike, Scarred for Life, 5 stars for failure. It was like a bunch of just demos and shit like that. He just threw pictures up, and like all these people were just tagging people and commenting, and it was like, shit, dude, there's like something here. Like there's such a close group of people that are all connected by just this one small, what at the time we all thought was this teeny tiny scene of like just our friends.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, looking back on it, yeah, it's kind of crazy, and especially kind of the early days of the internet, or maybe time when there really wasn't the internet, but of just being able to pull all of that stuff off was kind of remarkable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like going to record stores to find flyers, to find out what shows to go to, or word of mouth, or, you know, it's just like, it seems like a lifetime ago at this point.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to, growing up, I had a dad who was super supportive and was really interested in taking me to a bunch of shows. Mm-hmm. So I actually he would drive me, and it was either just me and him, or like me, my sister, and him. But he had no problem like driving us like a couple hours in, you know, any direction to go to a show. But in 2001, I remember. He drove us to a show at Club Chrome. I don't know if you guys remember that place.
Oh, yeah.
So Club Chrome, because Thursday was playing.
Yes.
So it was around my birthday. So it was like July 14th, July 15th at Club Chrome. But it was Thursday, Boy Sets Fire, Rise Against, and The Movie Life. And maybe some other bands. I feel like it was like one of those like showcase, like label showcase things or whatever. Mm-hmm. But so we drove out that way, and I guess it was maybe like an hour away, hour and 20 minutes. I can't quite remember. But we drove up there, and that was the very early days of the internet, and we didn't buy tickets in advance or anything like that. We just kind of showed up, and it was sold out. But we were there a little bit early. Because we were anticipating buying tickets. So we got there 3 hours early. Nobody was there yet, besides like the bands loading in, and the place said that they were sold out of tickets. So my dad was like, okay. It's me and my sister there. He was like, all right, guys, just wait here. So we're waiting out front by the car, and he goes around to the back, and he takes an empty cardboard box from the garbage can and walks through the back door. Just, I guess, you know, the expression, you know, walk in like you own the place.
Yeah.
He walked in like he owned the place with an empty cardboard box, I guess, pretending that he was delivering something. I don't know. Managed to find somebody in some band. I still to this day don't know who it was. Managed to find somebody in some band that was playing. told them the situation, that we drove from Philadelphia an hour or some away, and he was out there with a 13-year-old kid and a 16-year-old girl, and we drove all that way, and we really wanted to see the bands, and it was sold out. So then the band, whoever we talked to, just put us on the guest list, and we were able to get in that way.
Wow.
But like that was the kind of dad I had growing up.
That is a great dad.
Yeah, he kind of did whatever he had to get it. I mean, I guess a little bit was in his own self-interest, so he wasn't, turning around and driving another hour and a half home, for nothing. But I mean, he would do stuff like that to us. I remember going down to Maryland, up to North Jersey, down to Philadelphia, like wherever. But he would, he had no problem taking us to shows and getting us in or whatever he had to do. So, I mean, I started young. I mean, I was going to some, going to the Rotunda, going to places like that when I was very young with my dad, because the city shows when I was that young, my parents wouldn't let me go by myself.
Okay. That's excellent. You got an early start. Yeah, if I had asked my dad to like drive me to Maryland for a show, he'd be like, "What? Like, are you serious?" So Tommy M, when do you first pick up a guitar, and what were were you in other bands before Everyone Everywhere? Because that's when I met you, through Everyone Everywhere and Centrifuge and all that stuff.
Yeah. Same age, probably 11, 12 years old is when I picked up a guitar. And my dad had played a little bit. So he had an acoustic guitar that was like up in the attic when I told him I wanted to start playing guitar, and he kind of got it out of the attic for me and tuned it up. And after he saw that I was playing it for, a few weeks, a few months, and not giving up on it, and, kind of progressing a little bit, we got one of those, like, whatever it was, like the Ibanez starter packs at like Guitar Center or whatever it was, the little mini amp and the guitar. And but I never took lessons or anything. I was always self-taught, whether it was, books at the music store. I always went to like Pat's Music on Street Road in Ben Salem. So like buy the music book with like the CD and follow along and whatever. So probably around like 12 years old, 11, when I first picked up a guitar. And I pretty much started bands right after that. So my first band that I was in didn't have a name, but it was like kind of like an emo band. Mm-hmm. And it was just me, and I played all the instruments, and I recorded it like direct into my computer, like some Windows 95, very shitty computer. And I had like a keyboard with a drum machine on it, and I kind of like recorded that with a microphone, so it sounded really, really bad, and there was no vocals on it. But it was kind of like, if I look back on it now, it's similar guitars to what I play in Everyone Everywhere, kind of more like twinkly, going into distortion and fuzz, into like clean guitars. Yeah. But it was definitely that like American football kind of style of guitars that I was trying to do at like a very, very young age. And then like the first band that I had, we were called Stars Apart, and that was like, we played a bunch of shows just in Ben Salem or whatever. I think we played Palanca Park once and some other stuff. Mm-hmm. But that was in my middle school, from like probably like 6th to 8th grade. Just some of me and my best friends just playing, and we were awful. I was the singer, and I cannot sing. And it was, I have my mom, while she was moving, she found a tape of me playing at my sister's birthday party outdoors at my childhood house growing up, and it is awful, man. I mean, it's just like, it's just so embarrassing. And usually I don't get embarrassed of stuff that I did when I was younger, but I'm definitely embarrassed of this. I mean, it was very, very bad.
So you don't want us to post it on our YouTube channel?
You know what, I'll find a clip of it and we can post it.
Let's do that. We'll throw a clip up on Instagram.
But that band also played Scooter's Skate Palace. Do you remember that place in New Jersey?
No.
Oh man, it was another place. It was a skating rink. It was called Scooter's, and we played that. But their shows didn't start till 10 p.m. So my parents legitimately drove me as like a 14-year-old kid, whatever, however old I was, out to somewhere in Jersey, maybe 45 minutes away, to play a show that started at 10 p.m. of this band that I was in and the singer of. That was horrible. And I have footage of that too, and I'll see if I could dig some of that up. But I mean, that was just excruciating. Looking back on that stuff, it was very bad. But it was kind of the same thing about we were always the younger kids that looked a lot younger than we actually were, so we looked like we were 10. So we always kind of, nobody really made fun of us. I mean, if the internet was around back then, I mean, we would have been just, slaughtered. Just meme after meme. It was like that bad. And then in high school, I started playing in a band called Razorblade Romance. We had the unfortunate circumstance of starting that band right before Him came out with their album titled Razorblade Romance. So it was really bad timing for us because everybody thought we were just like a Him cover band, which is not good. And that was the era where like Jackass was really popular and stuff like that. So like Him had that like and Bam Margera always was like obsessed with Him, and they came out with this new album. So it was like
That's the only association I have with him is like Bam Margera. It's funny. Tommy D almost quit the podcast because the legendary Hum came out with a new album recently. Fantastic.
Oh, I'm very familiar.
Fantastic album, by the way. So I text Tommy about it, and I'm like, yo, like autocorrect said Him though. So I was like, yo, new Him album. And he's like,
I'm like, wait, the Heartagram dudes? Those dudes? Like, what the fuck?
Yo, I'm so excited about the new Him album. You got to check it out. It's the best thing since Razorblade Romance.
In my head, I'm going like, I got to talk to Keith. Like, we might need to have like an intervention or something. Like, are you like whacked out again? Like, fuck, man. Like, that's you're hyped about Him? Like, really?
Is he
dude?
back on it? Is he back on it? Is he okay?
Yeah. So Razorblade Romance, band in high school, I guess you could say, and that was pretty much throughout 9th through 11th 12th grade. Before I could drive, my parents used to drop me off. The rest of those bandmates were in Morrisville, so my mom used to drop me off at my friend's house in Morrisville on Friday night after school. I would bring up my computer. We would play Counter-Strike. Set up like he had cable internet, which was sick because I had 56K. So I would bring up my whole computer and big monitor and stuff like that. And we would basically just play like Counter-Strike and play music all weekend long. And then she would pick me up on like Sunday night. But that was like probably 9th through 10th grade, 9th and 10th grade. And then I got my license, and would just drive and come back on like the same day or whatever. But so 9th and 10th grade, that was most of, my weekends were just going up and playing in that band. And we got into, how we made money in high school was we actually started our own like small recording studio at my friend's house. And my friend Ian, whose house I would go to at the time, I mean, that's what he does as a profession now. So he kind of like took what we did growing up of making our own home recording studio at his house, and he kind of just ran with it, and that's how he makes money now. Mm-hmm. But so I was into recording ourselves and writing music, playing music, stuff like that. Really into the home recording stuff from probably since I was like 14 years old. And then went to college. I didn't play guitar. I always go through these spurts of not touching my guitar for years or not playing music for years, and I'm currently in one of those.
Yeah, that happens to me too. It used to bum me out because and band would end it. I'd be like, oh, that's it, no band ever again, no music, I'm done. But I've realized it's always like a lot of years between bands for me. So now I just wait for it to pop back up again.
Yeah, it's many years. So then I started school at Temple. I went to Temple, and then that's basically through Centrifuge I met Brendan, the lead singer of Everyone Everywhere. I saw he posted something, and then I clicked on his profile, and he had like a link to his MySpace with some early Everyone Everywhere songs, and I checked it out, and it was like kind of sounded like Hey Mercedes, that kind of style of music. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. So I messaged him and I was just like, hey man, like, are you guys playing any shows? What's the deal with that band, Everyone Everywhere? I listen to your stuff, it's good. And he basically was just like, oh, that was just kind of like a project me and my friends did over winter break, like over Christmas break while we were like home from college or whatever. But that's not an actual band. But thanks. And I just
Wow.
messaged him back and I was like, well, like these songs are really good. I think we should do something with them. Like, I go to Temple, you go to Temple, if you ever want to hang out, jam, play these songs, write new songs, we should do it. And then that's like kind of how Everyone Everywhere started. So I messaged him on Centrifuge. I listened to some demos that he had recorded with some other band members, and then we basically started it. So it was Brendan on vocals, the other Brendan on drums, and then it was me. And then I learned all of the songs, and then we started writing new songs. And then the other two band members, they had a bass player and a guitar player. They were just around for like that winter. They didn't go to Temple. They went to like other schools, so they weren't even around. So basically I was replacing one of the other guys, and then Matt Scottoline, who's in that band Hurry.
Yes.
They were all like Westchester kids, and I was the only kid from Bucks County. So we kind of just started Everyone Everywhere and loosely started on the songs that they had recorded before we were in the band. And then, we just started writing new music from there on out. And that's kind of how we started. So it was like probably 2 years, 3 years in between bands before I even really touched my guitar. Like, I think I had to legitimately go up to my parents' house. I was living, in an apartment. I had to like legitimately go up to my parents' house, get my guitar back because I hadn't touched it in 3 years, and then he got it back, and then we started, playing these Everyone Everywhere songs.
Yeah, one of my bands started through Centrifuge around that time as well. Crash of '64. Like Pat from All Is Phil. Like, I was trying to put together a band that sounded like Quicksand, and the guys I had in it just weren't into it. And then one day Pat messages me and like a couple other people. He's like, yo, we're doing this band. And I was like, all right, let's go. So Centrifuge is the great uniter and starter of many great bands.
Ah, shit. Yeah.
Shit.
Centrifuge, it was as much trouble as I got in and caused on that message board. I mean, I still think back to those days. I mean, it was, I just remember I was living in a basement at that time when I joined Everyone Everywhere, and when kind of Centrifuge was at its finest, I would say. But I was living in my friend's basement on 22nd and Catherine. And I remember just staying up all hours of the night, just like on my computer in this unfinished basement that I was living in, just like talking to people that I've never met before, but I felt like I was friends with. That's how I met you. That's how I met like so many people. But it was just so weird that silly website made me so many friends and relationships. And it was like, as much as we like maybe would shit on it at the time or whatever, it was like, that was another thing that, this area, this pocket of Philadelphia had that was really cool that like a lot of other places didn't have.
Right. Yeah, it was crazy times. I don't know. Back then I guess I just didn't have much going on. I loved meeting and talking to people from the internet, and it seems crazy now. Like I would just show up to shows and like talk to people, and I would be like way too scared to do that now. But I mean, I was like drunk all the time before, so I guess that helped.
Yeah. That would help.
Yeah.
I remember just like, reading a thread about the show that was going on, and I maybe didn't have any friends that wanted to go to that show, or they didn't get a ticket or whatever it was. And I just remember just meeting up with people that I knew from Centrifuge but had never met before in person. And then I would meet them at the show, or somebody I would recognize from their user picture, or be like, or somebody I was with would be like, yo, that's so-and-so over there, or that's whatever. And then we would end up talking or being friends or whatever. But it was a strange time, but definitely something that is a little bit more out of my comfort zone now. But I guess when you're younger and, that was all, it wasn't like weird, like I feel like it's gotten more weird these days to approach somebody that you know online, but you don't know in real life yet. When like
Right.
back in the day, it was like I remember just talking to people that we had never met in person before, and there wasn't even like an introduction. It was just like you just started hanging out with them because like you already knew.
Yeah, I would walk up to people high as shit, and I would just say their username. I'd be like, boom, and then like they'd be like, yeah,
It's like the
and then,
code word. Like you know.
yeah. So I discovered Everyone Everywhere through Centrifuge, and I loved the band right away. I think the first song I heard was the Talk 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 song, Talk 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 song, and I was hooked right away. And I'm kind of picky with like emo type music. You know, it has to have just the right components, because a lot of times the music can be like too meandering or like too jangly. I don't like the super jangly emo bands, or like a lot of times the vocals are really annoying. So like, but you guys hit all the right marks, and I remember coming to see you at the Fire. I think you played with Restorations.
Which time?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like we probably played with them probably once a month at the
Yeah.
Fire.
Yeah, so that was a fun gig.
You didn't happen to be at our show at the Mill Creek Tavern, were you?
No.
Okay, so this was a show that was in 2008. It was June 2008 at the Mill Creek Tavern. I have no idea what other bands were there, but at the time, Matt Scottaline, he was the bass player. I was the guitar player. And then Brendan. Matt went to go work on a summer internship in LA on Tim and Eric. So we were like, oh shit, what are we gonna do this summer for our shows?
Yeah.
So that was like right around like, you know, we had just recorded and we just started, you know, playing shows and stuff, and we didn't want to lose momentum. So we got I moved over to bass, and then we got one of the guitar players back that was on the original recordings that I heard, and we got him to play some shows that summer. But I don't know if you've seen this on YouTube. There's a clip of Everyone Everywhere covering Hum Stars
Really?
at the Mill Creek
shit.
Tavern. So I wanted to bring that up because I wasn't sure that you had never mentioned it, so I wasn't sure if you had seen it or not.
No.
But it's not the full song. I think I hosted it. Somebody recorded it. I like saved it, or they sent it to me, and I put it up on my YouTube channel. But it's not the full song, but it's most of it. But it's me on bass. It's like a really weird lineup. It's not, you know, the real Everyone Everywhere lineup is like hodgepodge members. But that was a very weird show. If you've ever been to a show at the Mill Creek Tavern, it was very weird.
There was a lot of weird shows. There was like a lot of weird random shows there, wasn't there? Wasn't that like a thing with that place?
Yeah, and it was always like the place wasn't closed off. You know, it was like a big open room, and it wasn't closed off to people coming in that just wanted to go to the bar that night. So there was plenty of people there that just wanted to go to the Mill Creek Tavern to have like a cheap beer, because it was like a cheap neighborhood place. So you were playing to a lot of people that wanted you to not play, or wanted you to not be there, or couldn't wait until the noise stopped, kind of thing. But I hated playing there. But I think that was the only time that we played that song live, and there's a snippet of it on YouTube.
You know, I literally just remembered this right now. The only time I've ever been there, I was in like a blackout, and it was one of the worst. It was one of the worst days, or it was one of the worst nights / days of my life. Actually, I won't tell the full story here. That's for another forum. But I was at the Mill Creek Tavern. I don't remember. I don't know. I was at some random show or something, and I remember just like, oh man, it was a weird scene. See, that place is just the host of many weird scenes.
That place is cursed, and I don't know if they're around anymore, but I have never been to a good show there.
So let's talk about your first LP. Now that was legendary. Like when that came out, I listened to it so much. I still listen to it. I would show it to everybody, like people who wanted to hear it, people who didn't want to hear it. That was like my soundtrack to the summer of, what was it, like 2010 or something?
2010 it came out, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember the record release show at Kung Fu Necktie. And
that was a great show.
Yeah, sold out.
Yes, sold out because it was free, I think.
Yes, that's a good gimmick.
It was a good gimmick, and the bar was all about it because they knew that they would get people in there that would drink, and we felt very proud of ourselves that we sold out a free show, which was, a good way to claim that you sold somewhere out.
Yeah, and in typical me fashion, at the time, I missed half or more of your set because I was outside waiting for a guy for a thing. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but he never showed up, so it was an all around loss.
Gotcha. I do remember. I think you telling me that you missed half of our set. And I don't know if I was very good friends with you at the time yet, but we did talk, and I do remember you saying that you missed it, but you saw some of it and it was very good.
That is weird that I told you that at the time, I have to say.
I remember it being weird that you did tell me that because I didn't really know because I didn't know you that well.
Yeah. I had a tendency to just brain dump anyone who would listen to me at the time and just say like everything. I don't know what I know what my deal was, but you know.
Yeah, so the 2010 LP came out on Tiny Engines.
Now let's talk about that. Now I remember the blog tour where I think MP3 of every MP3 from the album was posted on different blogs.
Correct. So basically we started Everyone Everywhere, and anyone that has listened to us or followed us remotely or whatever knows that we were never a band that took ourselves seriously. We never we're super serious about making money or making it a career, and actually that first LP, the first 100 LPs, like physical LPs that we sold them online, and we did name your own price. So I mean, it was like never about money or anything at the time, and mostly because we just wanted it to be fun. But then also, I mean, like we were all in school at the time. So the only times we could really tour was basically we toured every winter break and every spring break. And that was just kind of like just stuck to the Northeast. We did play South by Southwest. We did go down south, but it was mostly like the Northeast. But we couldn't really tour. So, Tiny Engines was trying to figure out a way to get our music out there. Because at the time, I mean, the internet was around, but it wasn't. You couldn't gain the followers that you can gain today by, Twitter and Instagram and bands sharing music on Bandcamp and stuff like that. So touring was still the main way to kind of build followings in other cities. So that was like the one big thing that like Tiny Engines always kind of like brought up to us, was like complaining about us not touring or whatever. But yes, they did do the infamous blog tour, which I thought was very corny. But people talk about it still. I don't know if it's good or bad. But yeah, it was a different song each day on a different blog until, all 10 songs or whatever were released.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen a band ever do that before. You guys might be the only ones.
It's possible. I mean, I think it was a stupid idea. Maybe that's why nobody has ever done it.
Plus, blogs aren't really a thing anymore. You'd have to do like the social media tour and post one song on each platform.
Yeah,
that's a good idea. No one steal that. I'm gonna market that.
You could do one on Twitch. You could do one on Twitter. You could do one on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was our first. The 7-inch that we recorded, it came out on Evil Weevil Records, which was Bill from Flight Plan Records, a guy that I grew up, another Bucks County kid. So he was on one of our winter tours with us, and he basically we were playing like a Matchbox video game on like PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 1 or something, and one of the cars was like the Evil Weevil. So we had this idea. He was like, I'll start a new record label and I'll put out a 7-inch for you guys, and I'll call it Evil Weevil Records. And that actually happened. And then,
Wow.
that actually turned into a real label where he released stuff. I think he released like Tiger's Jaw, and he released like Spook Houses, and he released, a bunch of other, like, it became like a real thing for a while. But the 2010 LP was our first release that was like a label where they weren't our friends. Like, it wasn't like a friend of ours saying, hey, I'll do this for you. It was like kind of like we viewed them as like a real label, and they were just a 7-inch label at the time, so we were their first LP. So we decided to release that with them. And Chuck was doing the Bear Trap PR at the time, so we thought it was like a good way to get our music out and all that. But we had our differences. I think if you follow any of the Twitter beef or anything like that, they recently got into a lot of hot water.
Oh, right.
With a lot of their
I saw
bands.
that. Yeah.
But so for our second album, the second LP, we self-released that.
Okay.
But the first one came out on Tiny Engines, and we recently just got the rights back to that. Right before the shit hit the fan, kind of with all of that Twitter blowover and all of the bands complaining they weren't getting paid and all that stuff. I mean, we had gotten, I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm still friends with the one guy that wasn't a shithead. But most bands weren't getting paid money, and including us. I mean, we basically had not gotten paid anything from them for years, and it's not a ton of money. And like I said, if we were a more serious band or we cared about the money or whatever it was, we probably would have realized a long time ago that we weren't getting paid. But I think it was like one day we were just kind of like, hey, has Tiny Engines paid us recently? No, we haven't. And then we checked like our last payment, and it was like 4 years ago, and we were like, oh shit, we should contact them.
Yeah, and this happens all too often, and it's sad to hear that it's still happening. Like I know bands who they never got anything from their record label, anything. Like they got some CDs when they were first pressed, but they never got any money or any residuals or anything after that. And when you're 17, 18, 19 years old in a band, like you don't know business, you don't know how to ask for things, you don't know necessarily how to advocate for yourself and be like, yo, well, I'm supposed to get this amount of money on this date. And it makes me mad because, well, one, I have to sit on this information. I would love to start a bunch of trouble on this podcast. And two, it just fucking sucks, man.
To follow that up, one of the big things that from Tiny Engines and kind of their downfall of why they stopped paying us and why they stopped paying other bands or whatever was one of their big distributors. It was No Idea.
Okay.
So apparently what happened was No Idea stopped paying Tiny Engines, and they were basically the main distributor for, our LP for like online sales and other things like that. Basically, I think they got into some trouble, financial trouble, so they stopped paying Tiny Engines, and then Tiny Engines stopped paying us. But they never told us that, like, hey, No Idea owes us like $5,000, and they never paid it to us, and we're not getting it, so you guys aren't getting it either. They just never said anything. So when the time came and time came to settle up money that was owed, they gave us some money. We're like, okay, that's cool, but like, not to be a dick, and we feel weird asking, but like, I think it should be more.
Yeah.
And that's when they told us that, like, oh, well, you see what happened from like this year to this year, No Idea was our distributor, and they actually had stopped paying us and blah, blah, blah. But it was something that they just, kind of failed to tell us. But that was kind of one of their downfalls. But we decided to do the second LP ourselves because we had some creative differences with them. I mean, they wanted to, cut songs or rearrange songs, or they wanted to do things differently. And they knew that we were a band that didn't care about making money at first. Mm-hmm. And at first they were cool with it, but then, it just kind of got to the point where they wanted to push us to do things or, pressuring us into doing tours or doing whatever. And when it came time to do LP2, we told them that we weren't, we're like, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to do this one ourselves. We appreciate it. And they basically were just like, they said like, good luck. It's not as fun as you think.
Wow.
And we were like, oh, okay, well, now we are going to do this. But like, we do think it's fun. That's why we want to do it. We want to do something that is ours from start to finish, beginning to end, everything that we want to do, the artwork, the sequencing, everything. we just want to do it ourselves, and we think it's going to be fun to do as a band, as friends, and we think it's a good opportunity. And they basically were like, yeah, if you think that it's like so easy and fun, like good luck, go ahead, go for it.
Wow.
And we're like,
So,
okay.
So they were bitter.
They were bitter. So that's why we decided to do the second LP ourselves. We had made up our minds before that, but then them kind of being dicks about it just kind of like reinforced it even more that we made the right decision.
Yeah, and they should be bitter about it because that second LP is another classic. I mean, come on.
And it was kind of funny because after we did the second one, we did tour more. So it was like we did do like a full Europe tour. We were there for like 6 weeks, and we did tour down like South by Southwest and things like that. So it was kind of funny that we did the touring after the record label that wanted us to tour. We kind of did it after we left them.
Yeah. So is there still ongoing business with Tiny Engines?
So recently I talked to the one guy, Will. From what I know and from what I've heard from other bands and what he's told me is he's kind of broken ties with them as a label. He wanted to make sure he got as much money as he could to the bands that were owed it. I don't think they could pay everything. But basically, once he felt like he did all that he could do, he parted ways and he just left. Now, I don't know if that label's around anymore. I don't know what the whole deal is, but I don't think they've ever released an official statement or anything. But I know there's a lot of bands that were owed a lot of money, and we weren't even included in that list because we actually got paid something, like a couple $1,000.
Right.
But we got paid something, so we weren't even in that list. But there is, we're officially, we haven't broken up as a band, but we haven't played in many years, and I don't know if there's plans to play or write music in the future. But we are gonna, it's in the works. This might be the first time anyone's talking about it, but we are re-releasing everything. So we are re-releasing the first LP ourselves, not under Tiny Engines, under us. We're re-releasing the second LP, again, ourselves, like it was the first time around. And then we're also releasing a third LP that's going to be, it's going to have the first EP Pants on it. It's going to have the 7-inch on it, and it's going to have some other I guess like more like rarities or B-sides, not too many, but it's going to be basically a third LP of a compilation of everything else that we've done.
Wow, that's exciting news.
So that might be the first time that's been dropped anywhere fresh on your podcast here.
Oh, there
we
go.
love exclusives on the Northeast scene, so thank you for that.
So that's an exclusive. So I guess everybody who's interested can keep their eyes out for that. That's Lamo Records is going to be distributing it for us, even though we're self-releasing everything. They're going to be doing all of the mail order and things like that. So I think they're going to have it for sale on their website. And we'll post a link to it. Whenever. Brendan controls the Twitter, and I don't think he tweets hardly ever. But we'll probably release something soon when there's more details. But I think everything is being sent off to pressing. I think it's in the works.
No, that was going to be one of my questions. The social media, the Twitter account especially, is so, I love it. He still posts every once in a while, and it's just this super sarcastic, biting, like, sense of humor, and sometimes he'll like make fun of who's that band that like they always say like is saving rock, but they're really lame. They're like Led Zeppelin or something.
Oh yeah. Who is that?
But he was making fun of them on there, like, or he kept saying like saviors of rock or something, like trolling them, and then he'll like, you guys always make those best of emo lists, and he'll always be like, all these other bands
Greta
be
Van
happy to
Fleet,
be on.
was that it?
That's
Greta
it.
Van
Greta
Fleet,
Van
yeah.
Fleet. Yeah, he was posting about them, or he'll be like, "Wow, all these other bands should be happy to be on this list with us," and just like just funny shit like that.
So that's Brendan McHugh, the singer. He's
Yeah.
the mastermind behind the Twitter. I talk to him every day. I'm in a group chat with him.
Yeah.
Uh, he is hilarious. The Twitter presence that he has when he does post is hilarious. His humor, not everybody gets, and a lot of people don't get that it is supposed to be funny or whatever. So a lot of fans end up getting mad, or you'll see something in the comments that were like, "Man, I thought you were cool," or I thought you were going to use your voice for something better, whatever it was. But yeah, so that's Brendan that runs the Twitter, and he has a very good social media voice.
Yeah, it's right up my alley. It's just this very specific, like, sarcastic, like, blasé attitude that's just, I love it. I absolutely love it.
And I mean, that goes back to our live shows as well. So his stage banter at live shows, I mean, I for one, like, personally don't like stage banter, but his was always hilarious. And I didn't think it was just because I was in the band that I thought it was hilarious. Like, I genuinely thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
So for our record release show for the second LP, I don't know if you were there or not, but we played at the Barbary. And so we played at the Barbary, and we had Band Name open for us, Slingshot Dakota open for us, and then there was another band that was supposed to open as well, but they canceled day of. I'm blanking on the name of who it was, but they canceled day of. So basically, we were talking with R5 and whatever, and we were saying, like, oh, what do we want to do? Do we want to start the show later? Do we want to find a last-minute band to replace it or whatever? And we were like, you know what? Let's do something else. The money that we were going to pay them, let's just put it all towards pizza. And we'll just order like 50 pizzas, and we'll just make it free pizza for everybody at the show.
Now that is a brilliant idea. Like, less bands, more pizza. That's what I want.
So I don't think that had ever been done before. So we got, that was right around the time Pizza Brain had just opened up, and I was friends with the guy Brian who started it. And I messaged him, and it was like 11 in the morning. And I was just like, hey, man, I know this is like super last minute request, and like you probably need a lot of lead time for this, but we need like 50 pizzas for tonight. Is that something that you can do? And he was like, let me get back to you, hang on. And he talked to like the chefs and everything, and he was like, yeah, we can do it. I think we ordered like 50 pizzas. It was something like $600 worth of pizza or something like that.
Wow.
And we just got like half vegan, half plain pizza, and just made that free for everyone. But I remember at that show, I don't know if it was the first show Brendan started this off at, but he used to wear one of our band's shirts on stage and then auction off that shirt. And most of the time it was because like we only had like one or two of like a merch item left or whatever.
Yeah.
So what we would do is if we had like one LP left, or we had like one 7-inch left, or one shirt left, is we would like auction it off on stage. And for some reason, I don't know if it's like the auction set up, or it gets people in this like buy now mode where they have to get it, where you're like, this is the last LP, we're gonna auction it off right now. It normally is $10. You can buy it online for $10, but we're gonna start it off now at $1, and we'll just start the bidding. And sometimes like the LPs would go up to like double or triple the price that it would normally be. But at this show, he auctioned off he said it was our last t-shirt, so auctioned it off. I think it went for like $20 or $25 or whatever it was. It went up like pretty high. And then he took the shirt off his back and then threw it out in the crowd to auction it off and give it to the winner. But then underneath he had the exact same shirt on again. And
my God.
And then he auctioned that one off again. I think it only went for like $5 or something like that. But I mean, it was like
That's
like
brilliant.
that. It was like that kind of like stage banter that kind of, you can kind of see in his Twitter personality as well.
For sure.
But we would say a lot of things on stage, or he would say a lot of things on stage that that people would take the wrong way or take too literally or seriously, and like we would end up getting like people would end up thinking we were dicks. Or I remember finding on this like one Tumblr or something like that. It was like, oh, I met these guys at a show one time. They were all dicks except for Matt. He was cool. And I was
You
like,
know, I saw that recently. I like found your Tumblr and I looked at that and I was just cracking up at that.
I was like, I can't remember being a dick to anybody, like on purpose. Maybe they just thought I was because of something we said sarcastically, I mean, you know, Brendan would say stuff on stage all the time that was sarcastic or just stage banter that was just stupid. And you know, most of our fans thought it was super funny and they got it, but a lot of them did not, and it just went over their heads, and they were just like, oh, these guys are dicks.
Yeah, that type of humor can easily be taken the wrong way. You know, there's like a million accounts on Twitter that do that specific type of trolling now, and it's all hilarious. I love it. You know, I just flashed back to, I saw you at this random house show in West Philly. I think maybe Signals Midwest played too, and he was auctioning off the last, or giving away the last, I think it was the first LP, and he's like, who wants it? And no one was really saying anything, but I was there with Gary, and Gary was like, I want it, and Brendan was like, oh, Gary? Okay, here you go, Gary. Like,
I do remember that show.
yeah.
Yeah, that was like right when Signals Midwest was like huge at that time. They were like just coming out, and they were like very popular. So I think it was like everybody was there to see them and not us, and they just did not give a shit. And we tried to. Sometimes the auctions didn't work, and Gary got lucky.
He did. What was your last show? Was it? I remember seeing you at Brooklyn Bazaar in like 2015, maybe.
Yeah, so we played that, and then I think there was actually one show after that we played, because we played Everybody Hits, and that was cool because they opened up after. So we basically wrote most of the first LP and all of the second LP at that warehouse that we lived at 6th and Girard.
Yeah.
After we had moved out, Everybody Hits opened up downstairs. There used to be an old appliance place, and I think the last show that we played at was at Everybody Hits, and I think that was after the Brooklyn Bazaar.
Okay. Now, at that Brooklyn Bazaar show, I think you were going to play longer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like Brendan was going to start playing a song, but like maybe he didn't remember how. So I think like the set got cut short.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So I did find the date online of the Everybody Hits show. That was August like 24th, I believe, 2015. So I don't know when the Brooklyn Bazaar show was, but I think it was like close.
It was January 2015. It was like
Okay.
right around my birthday.
Okay, so that was
remember
January. Then I guess our last show that we played was in was August of 2015.
Okay.
And we played a fest at some point, but I think that was like before then. But yeah, so we were gonna play another song, so Brendan lives in New York now, and he lived in New York then, and that's kind of why the band kind of like faded out, was just because, you know, for us to play a show, it was, you know, getting together a few days prior and finding the time to practice and remember these songs or remember the tunings, because they were all, you know, nothing is in standard tuning. So for that Brooklyn show, we basically didn't practice before then. So it was just kind of like everybody was on their own. It was just kind of like, yeah, I mean, you know, I remember I took the train up from work after I left a little bit early from work. I was doing some movie, and I took the train up, and I had my guitar with me, and I remember listening on my iPod of, you know, just our songs and trying to remember them. And we had it because we had the set list worked out, and we're like, we're going to play these songs. And I think what happened was Brendan forgot how to play the last song, and then we were just kind of like, nah, fuck it. And we just stopped. But I think that show was also with Slingshot Dakota.
Yeah,
I think they
showed
headlined.
up. I showed up for you guys and left directly after. And I remember like, I was like, oh man, I need one more, just one more. And then that was it. It was done.
We knew you needed one more, but we tried. But we couldn't do it, and that's the tough thing at this point too, with us playing shows and everything is just remembering the songs. I mean, for a few years there, Brendan moved to New York basically right after we got back from our like European tour in 2012. So he probably moved to New York in like 2013, and we continued to play shows after that, but it basically required him, coming down the day before the show, staying at our house, and we would just practice for 5-6 hours, and everything was still kind of fresh, so it would take a little bit, and then it would come back to us, and it was like not a problem, and it was fine. And then as more and more time went between shows, it just got to the point where the practices needed to take longer. We couldn't remember the songs. Things were fine during practice, and then you get on stage and then you forget how to play the song, you forget the tuning or whatever it is. And I think at this point, I know I haven't touched my guitar in like a couple years at this point, and I don't even remember a lot of the tunings or how to play it. So we always talk about doing like another show or doing something goofy or whatever, but I just don't even know if we could remember them at this point.
No, that was going to be my question. Like, so the band's not done. You never like broke up or anything like that. It's just inactive.
Yeah, I would just say it's like inactive. It's in the freezer.
Okay. So there may be another show at one point, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, for sure. We talk about it. It's under. I'm not going to disclose them on the podcast. I can maybe tell you afterwards, because if we do what we're thinking, it's going to be very funny and never been done. But yeah, I mean it's still open ended. I mean, we haven't broken up, but I mean, I don't know if you have to say you're broken up, but we never said we're broken up, but we don't talk like we're necessarily broken up. So we do, we are releasing these records coming out, and we did talk about doing some shows in some select cities when this does come out. Now with COVID-19 and everything, that's probably gonna throw a little bit of wrench in the mix there, but we did talk about doing some shows in some of the major cities that we played before, like New York, Philadelphia, maybe Maryland or Chicago or whatever. Just trying to branch out and just do one show a weekend spread out across like a couple months or something like that, just for fun.
Yeah, you got to let me know about that, because if it's in the Northeast, I will be there for sure.
If and when it happens, there will definitely be at least one in the Northeast. But we have talked about that, and that was kind of like the plan of when we decided to re-release all these albums, that we were going to play some sort of show.
Yeah, I remember wanting to book you sometime. I lived in this house in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn that had like a big backyard, and I wanted to book you guys as the sole band. So I remember writing the Twitter account. I was like high and drunk one day, and I was like, all right, guys, how much for a show? Let's talk turkey. But I never got a response. So I would have put together an Everyone Everywhere show in the basement in which I lived had I been able to.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I wish I had access to the Twitter account then.
Now, that's a question I have. How does the dynamics work around social media? Does Brendan just make the Twitter and he handles it, or does anyone ever like want access and get denied? How does that all work out?
So at some point, we all had access to it, and it wasn't like ever a thing of, this person is in charge of it or whatever. It was kind of just, we all had access to it.
Yeah.
But then at some point, we had to change the password because it got hacked or whatever. And I think after that happened, I just had never asked for the password back. And at that point, the drummer, Brendan, he's not a big like social media guy or anything, so I just don't think he cares. And then Matt started doing his band Hurry, so he basically uses, the Hurry band Twitter handle as that, and he kind of has his own following on there. So I don't think he has too much of he doesn't really care too much about posting to the Everyone Everywhere account. But Brendan, I think, is the only one with the password at this point because we had to change it because it got hacked or whatever. So I'm sure if I asked him for the password, I could get it. But I at this point, I don't want to mess with his voice that he has on there because I feel like whatever I post is gonna be like not cohesive and not funny, and it's gonna be stupid.
It would be a lot to live up to for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So Everyone Everywhere, there was like the whole 2010s emo revival thing, and Everyone Everywhere always pops up in these articles like best emo band of the 2010s and
So
all that
weird.
stuff. Yeah, does that have any significance to you? Does that mean anything to you? Like, does it make you feel good at all?
It does. I can't speak for everybody in the band, and I'm sure it does. We never took ourselves seriously, and we never, it was always kind of a joke to us. But we did make these songs that we do love, and for many years, I mean, we're all still friends. All of us are still friends. But for many years, we were like best friends, and we did everything together. So it was a very, cool time in our lives, and especially to be that young and doing something. And it was kind of the classic thing of nobody really gave a shit kind of until it was like too late. But I would say it definitely makes you feel good. It definitely, it's cool. I don't know. Like, I know, like, I was never a Dashboard Confessional guy, but like Chris Carrabba made a list, and I think he had like, it was either his list or he reviewed everything on the list, and he reviewed like one of our songs, and just to be like, oh, this guy Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional like listened to something that you made and he said it was cool, even though I didn't listen to them growing up. Like 14-year-old me would have been like, holy shit, like I never would have thought that.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be cool because it's like you carved out a little niche and you get a little recognition for the awesome work you've done. So that I would be stoked on that. I would be stoked if anyone listened to any of my bands. So like
Yeah, I mean no, definitely it's super strange and it's cool. I mean another cool thing that happened from this band was becoming friends with other musicians. That I either looked up to growing up or whatever it was. Like on one of our tours we had played with Evan from Into It Over. It was when he moved to Chicago. So we played at this place, I forget what it was, but it was Bob Nana from Braid. He was playing solo. It was Evan, and then it was us. And then I remember reading on Bob's Twitter like after the fact, and he was like watching this band called Everyone Everywhere from Philadelphia. They're pretty good. And I was like, oh, holy shit, man. And then like a few months later, we were doing a tour down to South by Southwest, and I saw on his Twitter again that, he had a show fall through, and he was looking to play somewhere. So like that night I got him on the show. It was like Everyone Everywhere, The World Is a Beautiful Place, I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, and like Bob Nana at a pizza place in Austin, the Mellow Mushroom. And it was like, and I never thought I would be like friends or talking to these people, and like then that led me to being friends with like Chris Broach from Braid. And it was just like like 15, 16-year-old me would have thought that this was like impossible. And I guess what I realize now is that all of these, everybody is just, they're just like dudes. They're just people. They're just, they made awesome music, but they're just like everybody else. But it's cool to, I guess, be recognized, online by some of these people that you once looked up to or still look up to, and say, oh, you did this thing and I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my favorite part of this podcast is for someone who has always felt not a part of his entire life, just having this opportunity to connect with the artists that I love, and even with friends, like to get to ask them all these questions that I've never been able to ask, because I'm like pretty shy and standoffish So this podcast empowers me to take that step to like to get to know people and to have these conversations, and I love it. It's just a fantastic opportunity that kind of I didn't expect.
Yeah, it's cool. And I mean, in a way, I go back to something that you said of, never felt accepted, or you never felt like, I forget the word that you used, but I mean, in a
part
way,
of, yeah.
a part of,
Yeah.
in a way, isn't that like pretty much the reason that we kind of all got into the DIY scene or into hardcore,
100%.
into punk or whatever it was, is like at one point we never, all of us kind of never felt a part of, or never felt accepted, or never quite felt like, I don't want to say, like a normal, teenager,
Yeah.
or whatever it was. So that was the reason that we kind of like all got into this anyway. So for that community to then accept you, or to then be a part of something, is definitely, I guess, kind of like fills a little void of something that you lacked growing up, or that you've always kind of longed for. I think everybody always looks for acceptance, whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
No, that's
and I'm
huge.
not afraid. I'm not afraid to admit that I do. And I don't know. I had a problem of, even if I had a lot of good things in my life, I could never recognize it, or just like these imagined scenarios where I'm being kept out of things, or something is wrong with me and people don't like me, and all that self-deprecating bullshit talk. But just I don't know. I guess everybody goes through some of that growing up.
Yeah, for sure. And then, in that regard, to be talked about or be accepted by somebody when you were in that state growing up, when I was a 14-year-old kid or whatever, to have somebody in a band, Braid or Hey Mercedes or Dashboard Confessional, then recognize you as a young adult, or recognize your music or whatever, and accept you, then I don't know, you'd be lying, I guess, to say if you didn't think that was cool, or you didn't think that was, something special.
All right, so Tommy, I know Everyone Everywhere, but when I go to do any of the prep for any of the shows, I try to listen to the band while I'm doing work. So I put you guys on YouTube today. Keith, make fun of me now because I don't use Spotify. So I put you guys on YouTube, and I was just like, something came up, and I was like clicking through stuff, and I was like, I'll just put on this song, and then I'll click the playlist that goes along with it. And all of a sudden, this band that sounded like Slick Shoes started playing, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And I look at my phone, and it says Everyone Everywhere, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, there's like some weird glitch with my phone, like, what the fuck? And then I start like looking closer at it, and it says, no, Everyone Everywhere, and in brackets directly after it says Canada, and I'm like, what the fuck? There's another band called Everyone Everywhere? So did you guys ever have beef with them, or like was there lawsuits or
so we with Brendan's Twitter voice and his social media voice, we definitely started beef with them online. I don't think that they even acknowledged us. But basically they started their band Everyone Everywhere Canada like years or months after that we had started. Like, we were clearly around first. We clearly had at least one LP out, maybe two, one 7-inch out. Like, we had done tours. We weren't.
You were an
popular.
established band, yeah.
We weren't popular, but we were established. So then they started a band, and I think they had like all of these stupid songs. I mean, they like Donald Glover is not my lover, and like I'm a Pepsi guy, like all these like really stupid songs. And there was a brief period where we did kind of get confused with them a little bit, or somebody was like, hey, I saw your music video, but it didn't sound like anything like you, because they did like kind of these more like professional music videos and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was short lived. They ended up changing their name, I think, when we got a little bit more popular and they realized that they were on the wrong side of things. That this band who was previously just like nothing gained a slight bit of notoriety, and they were like, oh, okay, I guess we can't like do this anymore. But it wasn't anything. I think we were just like with like almost like cyberbully them in a way. But it was never anything serious or no cease and desist or like lawsuits or anything.
Okay, all right. I saw it and I was like, what the hell? The funny thing is, if you scroll down, so I actually clicked on the video. I was like, wait. So I started like reading it, and like, you know how they have the description and everything, and I went down to the comments, and all the comments are like, this isn't Everyone Everywhere. What is this? Like this, and it's literally like it's in a consistent thread of people asking, "Is this the band from Philadelphia?" And literally, there's one person that has like 10 likes on it, just says "No," like in all caps.
Yeah, that band.
I have an idea. Right, Everyone Everywhere gets back together. Right, we play some shows, and you write the first emo diss track to the other Everyone Everywhere.
Or that's good. Or we could just play that band's songs. We could learn those songs.
Oh, shit.
And
Yes.
then people show up and they think they're going to see Philadelphia, Everyone Everywhere. They are, but we're playing Everyone Everywhere Canada's songs.
That's like some fucking Andy Kaufman shit right there. Jesus.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
something. It's something we would do.
I absolutely. I can't believe it's not actually happening. In fact,
Just write a new album and just call it in brackets Canada.
That would be super good too. It was actually a few weeks ago. So it's kind of funny. My wife's coworker, he's actually a fan of Everyone Everywhere. So when it came up one day at work or whatever, that oh yeah, my husband, he was in this band, and oh, what band? Everyone Everywhere. Is like, oh man, I love them. She was looking for. There's a bunch of also like really weird covers on YouTube of people doing our songs. There was this band, I think they're from like Russia or something like that, but this guy on like, I'll send it to you. This guy on like a ukulele. They're playing in like quarantine. It's like a ukulele and like a drum machine and something else, but they're playing our song Wildlife from the second LP, and it's just like this really strange cover, and it's bizarre. But she wanted to send it to her coworker. So she went on YouTube to look for it, and she found the Everyone Everywhere Canada, and she was like, "What the fuck is this?" She was like, "This isn't you guys, right?" And I was like, "No, this is a stupid band from Canada."
there was also a video of like a children's choir singing or a choir or something singing the "Hey, I've got bigger fish to fry" song. Do you remember that?
Yeah. There was a weird. There's a bunch of weird ones. There's a lot of there are a lot of bands from Japan that have covered Everyone Everywhere. I've seen from like talent shows to just at like local basement shows or like something like that. But there's a lot of bands from Japan that play our songs a lot. We actually had a Japanese tour pretty much booked, and then that was when the tsunami hit and we had to cancel that. But there are a lot of strange covers on YouTube of people doing this thing, doing our songs or whatever.
How does that feel to see other bands covering music you wrote? That's got to be mind-blowing.
It kind of is. I mean, especially just because, I don't know, you almost in a way don't think anybody is gonna hear any of your stuff. And then especially at this point, I mean, there's the one thing from Russia, the guy playing on like the ukulele. It's like a ukulele player, like a 5-string bass player, and like a drum machine guy. That came out like 2 months ago on YouTube. So It's like we haven't played any shows in like 6 years. We haven't released any new music in like 8 years. And like there's people still putting out like covers of us online. So it's strange, but I've seen a lot of weird stuff.
Do you ever watch one of the covers and you're like, no, he's playing that wrong. That's wrong.
You know what? I had this thought the other day, but it was when we were kind of like talking about doing shows or whatever with the re-releases and things like that. I was saying that like our music is, you could kind of just play anything in that key or that kind of resemble the right notes, and it would probably be okay. Like, I don't think that you would need to play everything exactly right, and you could probably get away with it, because a lot of these people online, I'm like, that is not how you play this song. Like, this song, one, has like a capo on it, and there's no capo.
Yeah.
I don't know how to play this song, but I know that they're not doing it right. But it sounds fine. So, yeah, I wish somebody would actually like make tabs to our songs, because I legitimately forget most of them.
Well, they look pretty complicated, honestly. Like, I wouldn't be able to even come close to doing what Brendan is doing on guitar.
Yeah, it's weird. So he took lessons a little bit growing up, and he has this really interesting style of playing where it's like he finger picks, but he also uses a pick. So he's still holding the pick, but he's also like finger picking with like his pinky and his like ring finger and middle finger and stuff like that. And I remember when we first started playing songs, I was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Because he was teaching me some songs they had already written. I was like, "Dude, I can't play that."
Yeah.
So then my guitar style, from being someone that was completely self-taught, I don't know anything, you basically just play. I think anybody trying to play what you play, they would be very confused because it's not conventional, and you're making it up as you're writing the song, and I don't think anybody else, it would just feel like foreign to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's a weird mix of his guitar playing and his weird hybrid style of like kind of finger picking and using a pick, and then me of just not knowing what the fuck I'm doing, but I just like write what I like or what I think sounds cool. So it's not really difficult, but it sounds difficult because it's just unconventional.
Yeah, I would just make up like my own parts, and I would like sometimes double the other guitar player, but I'm like kind of doing my own thing that works along with the other stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my style too. And
Yeah.
and I will say every song that we've ever written has been collaborative. So, you know, somebody will come to practice or whatever with like a riff or a part or whatever, and then everything just kind of builds off of that. So most of the time, like Brendan or I would come with a guitar part, and we don't even teach each other that guitar part necessarily. So there's very few instances on any of our songs where we're actually playing the same thing, which I think is also kind of weird, and it kind of blends into this weird, you know, these weird guitar parts where you're like, how do they play that? But it's actually just like two guitars playing two different things, but they're in the same key and using the same notes, but they're totally different.
Right.
Because like most of the stuff is he would just, you know, start playing, and then, you know, the drummer would come in and you know, play something to match him, and then I would just start playing something in that key, and I wouldn't even bother to learn his parts, and we would never play the same thing. So a lot of our songs are like that.
And so now it's story time. So Tommy D, you'll get a kick out of this too. So Tommy M, when we started this whole thing, the Northeast Scene, it was a Instagram account to post old show flyers and stuff. And then I was like, all right, if we get to 1,000 followers, we'll do a podcast. And we did that. So I was going through I converted my YouTube to the Northeast Scene, and I was going through all my show videos to pull clips to post and all that stuff. And I was like, oh, cool, an Everyone Everywhere show. I filmed the whole song of Fold Over. You Played the Fire with Restoration. So I start up the video. I'm going to look at it, and in the beginning of the video, I'm heckling so bad. Like I'm just yelling shit nonstop to the point where Brendan gets pissed off, and he into the mic. He's like, "Shut the fuck up!" And then he's like, "Who is that?" And I just wouldn't stop, like until the song started, and that was kind of my MO at the time. Like I was just always a disaster, and I was
2011.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah, 2010, 2011, around, you know, basically up until 3 years ago. But I was so horrified. I'm like, this has been sitting on YouTube this whole time. So I took it down, and I clipped out that whole beginning. And then I posted the video back up, and I took down like all my show videos, because I was like, what if I'm doing this for every band? Like, what if it's the history of me being an asshole just sitting out here, and I haven't gone back through everything yet, to see what's going on. There's like, and you know, there's some stuff I have up, but there's other stuff I have to review, and I'm like, you know, so sorry about that.
I completely forgot about that until you had just mentioned it, but I do remember that happening.
Yeah, I talked about this on another episode. My friend was like, "I don't want to go to shows with you." He's like, "I don't want you on stage. Like you're a heckler." And I was like, "No, man, that's over. That's done."
That was old Keith.
Yeah, old Keith is dead. New Keith is here. He just stands quietly and enjoys the show.
Well, you got to respect it either way.
Maybe if everyone everywhere plays a gig, I'll, for old time's sake, I'll stand up front and no, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that. It's not in me anymore.
And I remember that show because I do kind of remember Brendan getting upset, and I was like, he usually thinks this is funny, but
Yeah.
I think that one got to him for some reason.
I have that special touch.
Yeah, you just have that effect on people, I guess.
I certainly did before. Yeah, that's without a doubt. So did you ever do any bands after Everyone Everywhere?
I ended up doing this band shortly after Brendan moved away. We did like 4 songs. We recorded everything ourselves at home, called Gleek. Mm-hmm. Like when you would gleek when you were younger.
Oh, right.
Oh yeah, like the spit comes out of your mouth. Yeah.
That was so gross.
We're not big fans of the TV show Glee, which we later found out.
Oh, that's what they call themselves.
They call themselves Gleeks because it's like a geek. But well, anyway, so I did that band with my friend Scotty. He was in a band in the Everyone Everywhere era, 2007 to 12, kind of this band called Pirouette. So he was in that band Pirouette, and he played drums for Alex G for a little bit. But he was living with me, so it was me, Scotty, Brendan Graham from Everyone Everywhere on drums, and then my other friend Chris on bass. And I think we did 4 songs, and we have like a band camp. I think they're up there. But that stuff, we wanted to do like kind of a heavier style band that was kind of like a mix of hum / Jesu / I don't know, that kind of stuff. So we were all like standard tuning, but we were dropped down, I forget, like 2 steps or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you want to check that out, I can send you the songs or whatever. I think they're on Bandcamp still.
Please do. That's right up my alley.
But we did that, and everything was home produced or whatever, and I'm kind of proud of that stuff because it was just all like shitty mics and interfaces and stuff. But we got it to sound like somewhat decent. But that was kind of like the last thing that I did that kind of played shows or was noteworthy in regards of like actually doing recordings or things like that. I'm sure I've played and jammed with other people or kind of done one thing or whatever, but to be honest, I'm like very, very self-conscious and weird about playing guitar with people. I think it goes back to me just being like self-taught, or me having an unconventional style of playing, and I found myself in a lot of situations of going over somebody's house or practice space or whatever to work on songs and this or that, and them telling me notes to play or chords to play, and especially after being in Everyone Everywhere for so long, where literally none of our songs are in standard tunings.
Yeah.
Of me just being in this like position where I freeze up and like you forget what an A is or a G is because like you're playing in this weird tuning and you don't even use normal fingerings or formations for chords or anything like that. And then so I found myself just getting like a lot of anxiety or not even wanting to play with people, or like I'll need to have like a heads up, and if you can send me songs in advance of stuff that you're doing, I'll like figure it out and then I'll come to practice prepared. But like I have a very hard time like jamming with people or just kind of like spur of the moment kind of playing. So I have to really trust the people and be friends with them that I'm playing with. I'm just like a nervous wreck when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same exact way. I'm self-taught. I don't know the name of even one chord. I don't know anything. I play solely by ear. I know 2 tunings. And I've been a part of like tryouts and stuff where they just like end it early and they're like, no, or like, just like, it's the same thing for me. So I totally get it.
Yeah, and it's a weird place, and I think that's kind of what made me feel so comfortable with everyone everywhere was like as soon as I met the guys, we just kind of like bonded instantly and just started hanging out all the time. And Brendan was able to send me the songs in advance, and like I learned them before I showed up.
Yeah.
And then we played those songs together for a while, so I kind of gained this comfort and confidence. And then when we started writing new songs, we decided to. The first song we wrote was in this weird tuning, DADGAD, and that kind of became like
Dadgad, yeah.
Dadgad. That kind of became the standard of everyone everywhere song with a slight different variation or a capo here or whatever. But once we started writing our first song as a new group together in that tuning, we never kind of left that, and I got a lot of comfort in that because one, it's an open tuning, so you can just strum the guitar open and it's a chord and it sounds good.
Yeah.
But kind of anything that you play, it's nobody teaches those chords or those that key or whatever. So it's everybody was kind of starting from the same page basically. It's like even people that had lessons never got taught in that tuning.
Right.
So everyone was kind of learning as they went, and at that point you're just playing what sounds cool or what you think is cool or whatever. So I think that's really why I liked playing with them as much as I did, was because they were like the first kind of group of people that I found that I could be totally comfortable with, and I wasn't self-conscious at all.
Yeah, if I'm in a band situation, we have to be growing together, like you just described, and figuring it out together, and no like attitudes or I don't know, super technical. Like you have to know the names of the chords, or I have to be writing the song like the primary songwriter, and we're like working off of shit I write, because then because I know it, I'm writing it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just I get it. You're in a super vulnerable place, and it's just very weird and strange, and you don't want to be embarrassed. There's still this like sense of embarrassment that you get or not being good enough or whatever. It's just like, I don't know. I think that's why I haven't played my guitar in so long, is because basically every time I would play is in a group setting of all of us together, and I just don't think I have the confidence or whatever it is to just want to. I don't have the motivation to pick it up and just play and write, because I feel like if I did that, I would want to do it with a band or my friends.
Do you ever feel like you want to do it? Like I need to be in a band again? Because sometimes I do. There's a couple things going on where I could potentially jump back into it, but I'm weighing it because I don't know if I have time, or I mean it's not this constant need anymore. Like I don't really care if it happens or not. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same way, and in a sense, and this is probably going to sound, really stupid, or people might think I'm an idiot or a dick or whatever, but it's like, in a way, you don't want to start from the bottom again.
Yeah,
and not that Everyone Everywhere even was that popular or gained that much of a following or whatever, but it was like, I don't have the drive anymore to play a show to 5 people.
Yeah.
Like when I did when I was 14, 15, 17, 18, like up until like, my early 20s. Like I was motivated to play. I wanted to play any show I could. I didn't care if there was one person there, if there was 100 people there. Like I just wanted to play, and I had that sense of drive to do that because I wanted to play music. But at this point in my life, I'll get in these zones where I'm like, okay, I really want to be in a band again, and I'll try to start writing music, or I'll get some ideas or whatever. But then this like sense of fear or dread comes over me where I'm like, oh man, I'm really just not motivated enough or don't have the confidence to play in front of like 10 people again. Like I just don't want to. I don't have the time or energy for that. Like I'm not motivated enough.
It's hard, particularly in band situations. I have found from my own personal experience that people just don't care and are frankly not very helpful. Like I've really struggled in bands to put together shows or generate any interest and all that kind of stuff. And Tommy D and I always talk about this. Like I expected that to be the same experience with the podcast, And like, to ask people to come on and then just not to respond or be like, the fuck, what? No. Like, it's been the complete opposite. Like, it's been really awesome, and everybody's been really helpful and have said really kind things. So it's a nice, refreshing change of pace.
That's great. I've always, dreamed of doing a podcast, so I'm definitely jealous of what you guys have going on. It's definitely cool, because I feel like I need a creative outlet or something to do, some sort of hobby work, because, I do have a minimal background in, recording. I'm interested in microphones and gear and, stuff like that. And, podcasting would be cool. And I just don't have the time or energy for music necessarily.
Yeah, that's why this is great, because we can just do it from our homes, and it's a lot of work, but it's not as much work as trying to get 4 or 5 people all to agree to something or show up to practice and all that. So give it a shot, man. And I'm like you. I always have to be doing something creative, no matter what it is. 2 years ago, it was the band. I put out an EP. The year after that, I was the lead in a play. This year is the podcast, and I think this is going to be it for a while, but I always have to be focused on some kind of little project or big project, whatever it is creatively I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think in a way I'm the same way. Also, I didn't know that you were a lead in a play, which I'll have to talk to you about later.
Yes,
that's pretty cool. I think in a way, and I think it is a detriment more than anything, but my job kind of scratches that itch for me in a way of doing something creative or making something or being a part of something bigger, because you're doing these TV shows or movies, and even if I am just doing accounting or I am just in the finance department or whatever it is, I'm still a cog in the wheel, a cog in the system that's making this bigger thing that's gonna be a creative outlet. And even though it's not my creativity, I'm around people that are creating, and it is something creative. So in a way, I feel like that scratches the itch for me enough where it makes me unmotivated to do anything else. And I do feel kind of like that there's like that, I'm lacking that in my life a little bit. And during this quarantine, self-isolation kind of shutdown, I took the first step of bringing my guitar amp upstairs. It was in the basement collecting dust. So I brought it upstairs, and it's in my office. I'm looking at it right now. Haven't plugged it in yet, but step one was bringing it up here. So I do have it up here, with the hopes of, trying to play again soon.
that's the first step. That's how I haven't played guitar in a very long time, but when I got one of those stands that you can just put in your living room and you put the guitar on it, I started playing a lot more. So you're on your way.
Yeah, I think I'm on the right track, and I love I think I like recording more than playing shows and stuff like that. But I would like to try to do something soon.
Excellent. So we're winding down now. So let's talk about what to expect. There's Everyone Everywhere re-releases happening, right?
There are Everyone Everywhere re-releases happening. We are releasing everything ourselves. The first LP, the second LP, and then we're doing the third one, which is going to have, pants. It's going to have a lot of weird people standing around. It's going to have a couple other songs that were unreleased or, B-sides or something like that. So we're going to do all of those. They're going to be released together, and we're going to do a special packaging of, I think we're going to do 50 or 100 of the first or second LP, maybe both, of that's going to be different artwork as well. So these records have been out of print for a while. I think maybe there was like 1,000 or 2,000 made of each LP, and once they sold out, we just that was another thing we just as a band just kind of like dropped the ball on that, and we just didn't bother repressing it. And Tiny Engines came to us and they're like, "Hey, do you want to re-release the first LP?" We're like, "No, we'll actually just take it back from you guys. We don't." That was like a clause that we had in the primitive email contract that we had. It was like, once all of the records run out, you have the option to take it back. So we were like, in this email from 2007, we would like to do the third line down, which is take everything back. So we're gonna do that. And then we did that, and then like they were like, oh yeah, I guess that's our deal, right? It's in writing. So we took it back, and no records have gotten made up until now. So that's what's to expect. We talked about doing some shows, in kind of hub cities that we played at a lot or were popular in, just to kind of I feel like a lot of our fans have kind of came after the fact. So hopefully to play some cities and get some new folks out there who haven't seen us before, have kind of just found out about us.
Beautiful. So I am greatly looking forward to that. I hope to be able to see you perform live again. And
yeah, I would love to play live.
I'm just a big fan from the first 7-inch up through the second LP. I still listen to all of it fairly regularly. Now, here's a question. Are there any newer unreleased songs?
You know what? I have a couple primitive like cell phone recordings and computer recordings of stuff that are like parts.
Yeah.
That I intended to bring to practice. I don't think there's anything that's unrecorded necessarily, but there's certainly some stuff that's nowhere near complete. For a while, as things were winding down with us, me and Brendan, the drummer, we would play at my house for a while of just kind of like some guitar parts that we intended to bring to the next practice to write as full bands. So there's actually a few of those songs out there that I have on my phone, of videos of us playing in my basement, of songs that we, were hoping to bring to the next practice that never happened. So, who knows? Maybe one day we'll rehash those, or I don't know.
Well, I sure hope so. And now some closing words from Tommy D.
So this is like one of those things that, like, as I've gotten older, it's kind of been become more and more part of my life, and I always thought it was kind of corny and like dumb when I was younger, but I started kind of like making a daily routine of just meditating in the morning to kind of just get my day started. I have 3 young kids, so I get up really early. I'm usually up between like 5:30 and 6 every day, and I was kind of like just listening to a bunch of different things, and one of the things that I sprung upon, and nothing ever in terms of philosophy or religion has ever really spoken to me, but I found this thing called Stoicism, and it's basically like an ancient Greek philosophy that kind of like it embraces things like that you would normally be like, oh, that's something I kind of want to like get away from. So like things like that are painful or things that are uncomfortable. It really kind of pushes you to kind of look at those at a, in a different perspective. And it also really kind of pushes you to kind of be like, the highest good or the best thing you can be is virtuous, like being honest and true. And one of the things that I've been kind of like thinking about is, because we have so much time on our hands now because of the quarantine, and I constantly am checking things on my phone. And one of the things that came to me is when I do this meditation every morning, I found this book of like all these like philosophical quotes, and I just read them, and they're nothing long, like a paragraph or two. But this one, I got it, and I was like, wow, that's huge for me. But it's this quote. It says, "Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you don't. Remember that the things you have now were among the things you once hoped for." And I sit a lot of times and I go, oh, I want new, like I'm obsessed with Air Max sneakers. So I fucking buy a lot of sneakers. I'm not like a sneakerhead by any stretch of the imagination, but I really do like having nice and new sneakers, and collecting them and keeping them clean and that kind of shit. And I found myself like just like scrolling through eBay being like, oh, I found these, and then I'm like looking at them like, they're the fucking wrong size, stupid, like why would you buy those? And then in my head I'm going like, no, buy them, like they're amazing, look at those, like like they only made a certain number of these, and they don't do that colorway anymore, and blah blah. And I'm like, dude, stop obsessing over the next thing. Be content with what you have, because, not that long ago, you didn't have it, and it was among the things that you strove to be, to get, and not even just material things, but just your station in life. So I hear it a lot when, like, Keith, when you say like I like spent a lot of time in life being like, I want to be in a band, I want to be in a band, and it's like I always think about like the things that mean the most to me now tend to be the things that have just been there. They're not things that I, went after and actively pursued. It was the things that came naturally, and the things that like Tommy, like what you were saying, like they were your friends first. Like these were the people you surrounded yourself with because you just clicked with them immediately. And that's why such great music came out of that. It's because of that comfortability and because of that bond and that friendship. And it's like, we work so hard to get things in life, and ultimately the life we have is pretty fucking awesome if you just take a step back and just think about it for a second and just really take a moment to reflect on what you have and how hard you work to get it. So that's it. That's all I got.
Wow.
That's heavy.
You've done it again, man. You've done it again.
I'm gonna start an offshoot podcast. It's called Stoicism by Doherty or some bullshit like that. It's just me talking.
This is a new feature for the show we're trying out, where Tommy just like brings it home at the end, and then we have like another discussion. So let me just say to that,
I love it.
Now, this is something I come back to a lot because for so much of my life, I was looking for something to fix how I felt, which was bad. I remember being like, I just need to be in a band. I need to be in a band, and people will think I'm cool, and I'll feel good, and the band will become famous, and all the dumb shit you think of. And then I'm in a band, and I'm like, well, I'm not playing with the bands I want to play with. I'm not playing enough gigs in the city. The band doesn't sound exactly how I want it to. It's not good. It's not right. I'm not playing guitar. I'm not writing enough. I'm not the singer. It's no good. So it's never enough. Nothing is ever enough. And it's like you said, Tommy, like for so long, I felt like I was never a part of anything, or I'm being kept out of things, or just something's wrong with me. Nothing's ever right. But then you can turn that around and be like, wait, I've been in a ton of bands. I have great friends. I've been on tours with those friends. I've done a lot of incredible things. I think it's all just about perception. If you want to focus on negative things or what you don't want to have, that's going to be your life. Or you can turn it around and focus on what you do have, which is like you said, the things around you, your friends, the thing you've done with your friends, all the good things you've built up.
Yeah, and it really is a matter of it. And I hate to go back to the meditation thing, but taking that time to just step back and appreciate it. It's so funny because like my daughters now, when we get up early in the morning, they'll get up at 6:30 or 7. So I'm up a full half hour, 45 minutes before them. And they'll walk in the room and they'll see me with AirPods in, and they're just like, all right, daddy's doing his thing. Let him go, because he's a much nicer and sweeter and more fun person when I have that time. And if you're one of those people out there that thinks it's corny or thinks it's dumb, or just recognize I was one of those people for sure, and just give it a try. And don't give up after the first one. I did the first 4, and I was like, oh, I still don't get it. And I just hit on something that for some reason, honestly, it was 4 seconds of a 20-minute long thing, and it was enough to carry me through the rest of the day. And I was just like, you know what? There's something here. It's a nugget of something. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's enough for me to keep pursuing it. And I just think especially now that we have this time to kind of be inside and be with our families, just take that time to appreciate it. Because again, I think we actually went over this a lot with Brad, but you don't know when the things you have that you think of your normal life are just going to disappear, and it's really hokey, and it's contrite. It's one of these things that's like, oh, well, you don't know what you have until it's gone. It's like, yeah, but here's the thing. We have the benefit of being pretty rational people for the most part, and we know that there's something coming. We know that this normalcy that we call our lives now, there will be a phone call, an email, news that you just get, and it's gonna change everything. So as banal and as mundane you think your life is right now, appreciate that shit, because you don't know when some fucking thunderclap fucking you know shit that's gonna come in, that's gonna be a goddamn storm in your life. Like you just like we get so complacent. I think one of the things that Brad kept going over, like from the last one when we talked to Brad from Interpol, was like, bring back boredom. Be okay with not being completely entertained. And like I'm still guilty of it. I mean, now at least that I'm a little bit more cognizant of it. But like, have you ever found yourself doing something like like a normal like daily routine, like emptying the dishwasher or getting food ready or something like that, and you're like, I have to have something on.
Yes.
Like
all the time.
I've really tried to push myself to not have something on, even if it's like something as simple as like I used to just put on like a post rock in the background, like, all right, I'm gonna listen to Caspian now, or I'm gonna put on Signal Hill and just kind of like zone out. And it's like, no, appreciate the moment you have right now, because it's some of this is going to come crashing in a very near future, and you're gonna look back on those moments where you wasted time, even just being in the moment. And it's incredibly difficult to do, but if you can start to do it, it becomes easier with time.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason why the when we got into music in 99 to 2012 or whatever, everything was so successful as it was then, because there wasn't this oversaturation and constant, stimulation of needing something, or you just kind of did what came to you, or you did what was natural, you did what you wanted to do. But I feel like we're a lot less likely to have, we're a lot further away from that than we realize, even with technology and the internet and things like that. I just feel like stuff like that is, to your point, it's just people are too obsessed with constantly moving, and not even in the right way. But I feel like we're further from that than we realize.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the bring boredom back thing, because I have to have something on at every minute. Like, even if if I'm brushing my teeth, I'm like, wait, I have to have the radio on or a podcast on, like, as I do it. Like, every minute has to be filled with something, and that can't be healthy, right?
Keith, this is one of those things, I don't know if you can relate to this, but like, do you remember that stand-up comedian, Doug Stanhope?
Yes.
So like, he talks a lot about like his drinking and drug use and stuff, and like his stand-up, but he does this thing where he talks about, he goes, I have to drink myself to sleep at night, because when I lay down and put my head on the pillow sober, that's when the fucking circus starts. Like, that's when my brain goes into overdrive. And he's like, I just wish I had control of it. And I think the thing is that ultimately we do have control of it. You just have to be able to you have to put yourself in the mindset of like, I have the ability and the drive to do this. It's just a matter of like, it's practice, and nobody wants to put in the work, and it's because the work is shit. Yeah. Like it sucks.
Oh, I know, because I've done that. My life was Doug Stanhope's. Just I built a fantasy world where I never had to see anybody, and I just got messed up all the time for a long, long time. And I've talked about that. Getting over it was hard, and if I want to get over having to fill every minute with podcasts and YouTube videos of video game reviews and all the other shit that I watch, I could do it if I wanted.
Oh no, bro, I'm so guilty of it too, though, because I just watched. There's a channel on YouTube, that Summoning Salt. I watched this dude's videos about people that speed run old Nintendo games.
Oh yeah,
and they're the best.
Those are the best.
They're absolutely the best.
Yeah.
Oh, and this kid, I'm not trying to this guy's not paying us or anything like that, but this fucking kid's videos are so well produced and so well researched. They are fucking insanely good. The one about Mike Tyson's Punch Out is really good. The one about Super Mario is so intense because essentially people just find glitches in the game,
Yeah.
and then it's like they start to exploit these things, and he uses them as touchstones. Like he'll be like, "Oh, that's when people started using it's always like someone's Twitch username or something like that," and he's
The
like,
method,
"That's when
yeah. They're like,
yes,
yeah.
he's like, and it's so cool, like that kind of stuff. But it's just I think it's important that we just don't inundate ourselves with it.
Bring boredom
boredom
back.
back.
That's going to
There
be
you
our
go.
slogan. That's going to be our slogan. All right, so that's it. That's it. So Tommy M, anything, any last words?
I don't think so. I just like to urge everybody right now to take a look at what's going on in the world and make sure you're on the right side of things when we go to look back at all this stuff in the history books. Make sure that you were on the right side of things from the jump, and do what you can right now in your communities to help everyone out. I mean, everything from DIY music and punk music. I always say that right now you can really tell the people who grew up listening to punk music and hardcore music and had that sense of community, and those who didn't, because a lot of times those who didn't are the ones causing the problems, are the racists, are the shitheads. I know I made a couple plugs on the podcast of stuff we have upcoming, but also like to urge people to take a look of what you can do to help out your community, things you could donate to, and things you could do to make this world better, and kind of bring the whole punk DIY mentality of fuck racists, fuck fascists to the forefront.
Absolutely. An important message, because all the
100%.
ideals I have and that I carry, I got from the scene, from hardcore music, from punk music. And shit, the donations I made to the different causes for things that are going on right now, like I got from the hardcore pages I follow on Instagram that have been posting them. So, I mean,
Yeah,
the scene cares.
It's crazy, not to go out on another tangent here, but just texting with some friends recently, and most recently just kind of texted some friends from my first band that I haven't talked to since like middle school or whatever, but reached out to one of the guys there, the bass player, and I was just like, hey man, I don't know if this is your number anymore, but remember when we were obsessed with Anti-Flag when we were like 13 years old? I was like, well, I would like to think that that stupid music, or what we would consider stupid now, really, built us into the people that we are today, of being on the right side of history and on the right side of things. But it's just crazy kind of how it works out, and how something so silly and so stupid of music or a community growing up kind of shaped us all into these people who don't suck as adults.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, Tommy, I just want to thank you again for coming on. I've been a big Everyone Everywhere fan since the beginning. I look forward to more. And, I think I saw someone post on Centrifuge once. They said, I've never seen a band accomplish so much while caring so little. And I thought that was a perfect description.
That's a perfect description, and that's a perfect note to end on.
Absolutely. So thank you, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Remember, like, share, subscribe, rate us, email us, write us messages, share us with other people. We need all that stuff. It helps us grow.
Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Smash it. So thank you.
Let's get these folks some MeUndies reads. Let's get them a Blue Chew read. Let's get them a Casper mattress read. So the likes and subscribes are very, very important.
Yeah, yo, Tommy, imagine if we started generating revenue instead of just paying for this. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
Unlimited mattresses and Blue Chews.
Thanks, everybody, and until next time.